Okay, guys, so listen, here's the deal. What I want to cover in this nutrition presentation is where we go wrong, okay? Where we go wrong in terms of nutrition as I see it, okay? From coaching people over the last 10 or 15 years in the fitness industry. Then I want to go through with you guys how to fix it and then what to do. And look, in terms of questions and answers at the end, obviously when we shot this live with the guys, we were going back and forward throughout the whole presentation. So if you're watching this, let's say in the Facebook group, go in there, just ask any questions underneath and I'll jump in and answer them. If you're watching this back on YouTube or whatever, if I send you this in an email, maybe you can just email me back with any questions you might have, all right? Now, what I'm going to say is, before I get into the meat of this, over that last 10 or 15 years, what I would say is these rules, what I'm going to speak about here, applies to 97% of people, all right? So most people that would follow these things are going to get results. There's always going to be 1 or 2% of people that might have some sort of medical issue which are going to need to seek medical attention. But to be honest with you, most people don't, all right? And if you just focus on these things which are relatively simple, not always easy, but relatively simple, you're going to get results. So listen, let's get into it. So the big thing to start off with, okay, and this is something which, again, is quite simple, but you really have to just take a moment and kind of think about it. Knowing what to do and doing what you know are two totally different things. So when it comes to nutrition, most people know what they should do, okay? They know the difference between eating a Snickers and eating, let's say, an apple, all right, and the results that's going to produce. But there's something wrong, all right, with making our decisions, making our choices, and that's where our kind of habits come in. And the next kind of thing to think about is that the quality of the questions you ask in your life are going to directly influence, I suppose, the quality of your life. So this, I suppose, is an Anthony Robbins quote, and he kind of says, the quality of your life is directly reflected by the quality and the quantity of the questions you ask yourself, and also the questions you ask your coach. So very often people come asking themselves the wrong questions, or they come and ask a coach the wrong questions, and in doing so, they kind of get led off in the wrong direction, especially when it comes to nutrition. So let me set you up a little scenario, all right? Imagine your child comes to you and they say, Mommy or Daddy, listen, I want to have a successful career. And then you turn around and you say to them, listen, be a lawyer, okay? And then they turn around and say, but what if I don't want to be a lawyer? And then you were to turn around and say, then fail. Now let's flip this, all right? It sounds a bit crazy, I know. But let's flip this around and think of what happens every day in the fitness world, or what happens every day, especially when it comes to nutrition. You might be asking yourself a question, or you might be Googling on the internet, or you might be reading a book, or you might come in and ask the coach a question. And very often it's something along the lines of, how do I lower body fat around my tummy? I literally just heard this a second ago out in the gym. I don't want to lift any heavy deadlifts because I feel like my legs are getting bigger. And fair enough, the coach turned around and said, well, listen, what's your nutrition like? Well, it's not great. Well, maybe we focus on your nutrition, because I don't think the deadlifts are making your legs all that bigger, all right? So how do I lower body fat around my belly? How do I lower body fat around my ass? How do I lower body fat around my arms? Or how do I lose, my man boobs? Or how do I build bigger biceps? So you could come, and this is the question that you might be asking yourself, and you might turn around and then the coach, or if you're looking on the internet, might turn around and say something like, do a ketogenic diet, or do a paleo diet, or do a plant-based diet, or do whatever. And this is what happens a lot of time in the fitness industry. And then you might turn around and say, well, I don't want to do a keto diet, and then fail. I don't want to do a paleo diet, then fail. And really what we've got to start thinking more of is this kind of concept of match quality. So economists use this, and they kind of use it to describe the degree of fit between the work that someone is doing and their purpose, their unique abilities, or their values. And the exact same thing we should be thinking about with nutrition, okay? There's no point in you coming into me and saying, and I hear this all the time, I just need a food plan, all right? If you just give me a food plan, then everything, all my fucking problems with nutrition are going to be solved. And to be honest with you, it is absolute bullshit in 99% of the cases, because if I was to sit down, and I do this, I've done this a lot in the past, somebody comes in, we go through this conversation, we write them out a food plan, hand it over, and then the next day say, hey, how's your food plan going? Haven't started yet. How's your food plan going? Oh, it's a bit difficult. I don't like eating chicken for breakfast. How's your food plan going? And I think you see where this is going. Ultimately, in order for anybody to get results, what you've got to do is start taking ownership of it and use a coach as a guide, but make your own food plan. Make it in conjunction with the coach and match up, why you're doing what you're doing, what your abilities are when it comes to food, and then what you value. Because again, somebody could be vegan and I'm telling them to eat meat. Or somebody could be like, hey, listen, I don't eat vegetables, and I'm asking them to eat vegetables within the food plan, because that might be the right thing to do. So I hope that makes sense to you. And the first bit of this, imagine if you're watching this back and you can pause it and stop it. The first thing to think about, and maybe even it's a writer down with a pen, is listen, what are the questions you ask yourself when it comes to nutrition? And what are the questions that you ask of the coach as a result of that when it comes to nutrition? And if we can marry these things up and start asking better questions, we'll get much, much better results. Okay? So the next kind of big thing to think about is that everybody wants real complex things, all right? So it's this idea of complex versus simple. And really what happens with most people, like these dudes burying their heads in the sand, is most people try and hide in complexity, okay? So is a ketogenic diet better than a paleo diet? And again, all of that is quite complex stuff, all right? There's a lot involved there. But if you are confused in any way, shape, or form, or if you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm on a keto diet, I'm on a paleo diet, you can hide in that complexity and actually neglect the fact that, hey, dude, drinking 5 bottles of wine a week is not helping your fat loss goal. Eating no vegetables is not helping your weight loss goal or your health goal. Not eating enough protein is not helping with you trying to build a little bit of muscle. That is the real issue, not did you eat white meat, red meat? Did you eat a vegan protein or a non-vegan protein? Okay? So again, a lot of people will try and hide in this complexity. Now, it was funny enough because even as I was going through this presentation live with the people, even after I went through everything, we had questions. When we came to the end, people still kind of went to hide with this complexity. And again, I totally understand it, but when you can kind of highlight it, when you can see it, when you can start saying, well, what questions am I asking myself? Yesterday I was talking to one of the guys and he was like, listen, I'm having quinoa instead of rice because quinoa there's not as much of a glycemic load. And I was like, well, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter because when you think about glycemic load, it doesn't take into account if you're eating that quinoa or rice with other food. But even if we weren't to talk about that, then later on, we start talking about alcohol and what beer is the best beer to drink. So if you're worried about the glycemic index of quinoa versus rice, but at the weekend you're going out and drinking 5 beers or 10 beers or 20 beers, you're kind of chasing after the wrong thing there. And again, I'm not turning around saying I like a drink as much as anybody, but remember that kind of concept of match quality. Match up, what you want to do with your values, with your beliefs, and with what you can do at any particular time. And do not be worrying about complex little things when simple is always going to be the best way forward. So guys, leading into that then, it's always this concept of what is the best diet, what is the best diet, what is the best nutrition plan, and there's vegan, and there's paleo, and there's zone diet, and there's all these different diets, and there's the diet that Mary in the office does and she lost 5 pounds, all right? Ultimately, it all comes down, it's like this. One of the best books I've ever read on nutrition is one by Dr. Weston A. Price, right? And he was a dentist. So back in the 1800s or 1900s, he went and he traveled around the world to all these indigenous tribes. I think there was about 15 of them in total. And he looked at the health of these people. He looked at the tooth decay or the rate of tooth decay. And as he got further and further into this, he started noticing very similar things across the board, right? Every single indigenous tribe he went to was healthy, all right, on any measure. They had little or no tooth decay. They were happy. Things like the Inuits or the Eskimos, they had no word for depression in their language, all right? So people were generally happy. And what he noticed was that throughout all these regions, the people ate totally different types of food. So at the equator, where it was where it was really warm and kind of tropical type climates, they ate a lot more fruit and vegetables and a lot less meat. Then as you moved out from the equator and you start getting into the grasslands, let's say, throughout the world, they ate a lot more meat. It was kind of maybe 50-50 between meat and vegetables, okay, because there was a lot of big game that they could catch. But as you moved out into the Arctic regions, the tribes ate almost no vegetables whatsoever, okay, and they survived solely on meat, all right? But the thing that he noticed over and over again is that the food that they ate was real food, it was grown locally, and it was seasonal. So whether it was a mostly plant-based diet, whether it was a mostly meat-based diet, all these people were healthy, but they were eating real food, all right? And the real food that they were eating was seasonal. So when he went around and he studied these tribes and he was looking at them, he was looking at the teeth structure, the bone structure, the structure of the jaw, and every single person was healthy, right? Had great teeth, no tooth decay. Then what happened in one generation when he brought in what was called the food of Western commerce, basically things like wheat, flour, any food that came in a can, the health of the people was totally devastated. And you can see things like this were happening. And this was a regular occurrence all over the world. The people's teeth were falling out. They had mental health issues, sickness, infertility, all sorts of things happened. All right. So this is giving us a fairly good clue here. As human beings, what should we be eating? We should be eating real food. All right. So that's the first place that we should be thinking about to start. Now, ultimately, as I've been looking at this over the years and read a lot of books, went to a lot of seminars, studied a lot of so-called experts in the field, what I've begun to notice is that, again, let's think about simple versus complex. Ultimately, what I've seen is that, and what I believe is that it's not so much, if we're talking about losing weight. So when most people walk in the door to the gym, they want to look better, they want to feel better. And that's revolved around, for most people, toning up, which means lose a little bit of body fat or lose a lot of body fat. So let's keep it on the lose weight, not necessarily health here for a second. What I've noticed when it comes to losing weight, it is 100% in my belief down to people's habits. It's not necessarily the food they eat. I've seen people that eat very poor quality food, but they're not overweight because they don't eat a lot of food. Okay? I've seen people in great shape who eat a lot of shy food, but what they will do is they will auto-regulate. So meaning when they eat maybe a takeaway, for example, they will increase their calorie expenditure via exercise, and it's not punishment workouts, but maybe they just go for a walk or they do an extra, 2 or 3 kilometers in the run the next day or that day. Or they might turn around and reduce down the next meal, or they might take carbs out of a meal, but basically they auto-regulate. So if you think about what I'm saying here, I believe that the habits that we have, whether those habits are positive or negative, have a much bigger impact on our weight necessarily than the food that we eat. Now, obviously, if you're eating, good food, it's going to have a positive impact on your body. But bear with me here, right? So think about habits. They're the small decisions that we make every single day. And it's ultimately what we repeatedly do. So, you could say that the life is a total sum of your habits. Whether you're in shape or out of shape is a result of your habits. Whether you're happy or unhappy is a result of your habits, all right? Whether you're successful or unsuccessful is a result of your habits. Whatever way you're measuring these things, okay? And ultimately, what happens with a lot of people is we have this habit loop. So we have some sort of cue, then we have a craving, then we have a response, and then we have a reward. So imagine a situation for me. I get home and I open up the press and I see chocolate rice cakes and peanut butter there. So the cue for me is visual. I see the food. Then a craving might come on. I might start saying to myself, fuck, I would love a few of those rice cakes. I want a few of those rice cakes. And that could be a few minutes. It could be a few hours, or it could even be a few days. Every day I open up, see the rice cakes. Every day I open up, I see the rice cakes. And the response is eventually going to be eat the rice cakes. And the reward then is like, ooh, I feel good eating the rice cakes. But for a lot of people, this becomes a negative loop because it's like we have the cue, we have a craving, we have a response, I eat the food, and then the reward is, oh, I ate the rice cakes, and then straight away that might flip to, I shouldn't have ate that food. All right? But in order to fix this situation, in order to add in an intervention here, ultimately what we have to do is we have to put some sort of roadblock in front of the cue, the cue, the craving, or the response. So for me, an easy way to fix this would be not have the rice cakes in a press where I have to open it up numerous times. So let's say not have them in the press where the salt and pepper is. So if I'm sitting down to eat my dinner and I want some salt and pepper and I open up and the rice cakes are sitting there, an easy fix would be to take them out of there. All right? To take them out. A fix again could be just don't buy them. All right? But ultimately, in order for you to formulate better habits, especially around eating, you've got to understand what goes on. What is your cue? What is the craving? And then what is your response? And then if you start to have an understanding and track these things, then as a coach or even yourself, you could sit down and put an intervention in place to help you make better decisions. Okay? Moving on from this, and again, still saying in this idea of habits, most people, when we talk about nutrition, remember what they want is the outcome. All right? Nobody ever came in to me and said, Jay, listen, I want help being healthier and eating healthy food because I want longevity. And if they had said that to me, they were ultimately lying, because really when you get into it, they wanted to lose a little bit of weight, they wanted to tone up, and they wanted to look better. And as a result of all those things, yeah, you feel better as well, all right? Because just being fucking ripped isn't necessarily healthy. Just being ripped doesn't necessarily mean you're going to feel good. For a lot of people, the chances are you're going to feel shitty the leaner you get beyond a certain point. So think about the outcome. Most people turn around and say, hey, I want to lose weight. And then as the coach, usually what we do is start to think about a prescription. Well, if you want to lose weight, we should eat this and this and this and this, and then we should do this exercise. So that's the process or the system that we're going to follow in order to get you your outcome. But ultimately, if you want long-term sustainable results, and people in the gym, especially after the first few weeks and months of training, what they always turn around and say is, I want long-term sustainable results. What we've got to think about doing is shifting and changing your identity. So if you're the type of person who's yo-yos up and down, up and down, up and down, you're always just focused on the outcome, and you'll use a different process to get it. Maybe sometimes it's Weight Watchers. Maybe sometimes it's go on a paleo diet. Maybe sometimes it's go on a low-carb diet. Maybe sometimes it's go on a juice cleanse diet. So that's the process that you're following to get the outcome. But if you're always falling back, all right, if you're always falling back on yourself, ultimately you haven't changed the identity piece, which is crucially important. So if you're thinking about this, all right, and we're thinking about starting to change somebody's identity, change your identity for somebody who is fitter, healthier, stronger, or less overweight, whatever your goal might be, you've got to ask yourself some questions. And again, we're coming back into this idea of asking yourself the right questions. So what you'd say is, listen, if I wanted to be, slim and lean, or if I wanted to be big and strong, I'd have to say, who could do this? What is the type of person who would do this? All right? And it doesn't have to be, it's fucking John or it's Mary. It's just think on a conceptual level. Well, what would this person have to do, okay, in order to get this outcome? So this is the process of the system. So imagine this person, if you got a guy in the gym, he's like, I want to be big and strong. All right, obviously nutrition is involved in this, but I want to be big and strong. It's like dudes who are big and strong go to the gym and lift weights 4 or 5 times a week. And they do that repeatedly every week, week in, week out. Maybe they even go 3 times a week. So it's 3 by 52. 3 sessions a week for 52 weeks of the year. Not train for 2 months, take 2 months off, go on the beer, and then come back and wonder why I haven't got results. And then after that, so once we think about who is this person, then we want to think to ourselves, all right, what do they do? What's the process or the system that they follow? And then only then do I turn around and start to say, how can I refine or make this system better for a better result? How can I optimize it? Now, what most people want to get into is optimization straight away. Jay, which is the best protein powder? Doesn't matter. Jay, which is the best supplements? It doesn't matter, right? If you're not eating 3 solid meals a day of real food and having a few portions of vegetables each day, do you think it matters whether you're taking, a vitamin D capsule once every second day or not? It doesn't matter a fuck, okay? So think about identity, then think about the system, and then we can optimize the system afterwards. And an example of this is this, and I just seen this, I think it was last Wednesday, Jen put this up, and one of our buddies turned around and asked her, listen, how long have you been training for this Spartan race? And she replied, listen, about 6 weeks. And then on reflection, she said, it's actually much longer than that, nearly 41 years. And what do I mean by that? So ultimately, she's been training in the gym, 2.5 years, or maybe it's coming up to 3 years in January, thereabouts. And every single training session she's done has been preparing her body to go and do the Spartan race. And even before that, all, the ups and downs and the different things you come across in your life are preparing you to be a person who, commits to doing something, goes to the gym, trains for that thing, and then goes and finishes it and completes it. And ultimately, it's an identity shift. Okay, the person's identity is changing to, I am, a fit, strong person, as opposed to somebody who might be like, no, I sit on the couch and watch football. All right. So this is crucially important. So if we're thinking about habits, and if I was to try and write down, particularly when it comes to nutrition, habits to follow, there's 7 of them. Now, before we talk about, which protein is better, is white meat better than red meat, is chicken better than turkey, is bacon okay to eat in the morning, are Cheerios okay, what about Coke or Diet Coke? Before we talk about any of that, this stuff is going to be much more important. So habit number 1 is going to be show up and be honest. So what do I mean by that? It's like, again, going back to that 3x52. Are you getting to the gym 3 days a week for 52 weeks of the year? Or when we come to nutrition, are you eating 3 solid meals a day, and in each of those meals having a little bit of protein and some vegetables? All right. After that, I don't really care. We can talk about it. We can optimize it. But are you tracking what you're doing? Do you know what you ate last week? If you're looking to try and lose weight, do you have any idea of what you're eating on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis? And do you have a plan? And are you honest with yourself with that plan? So what do I mean by that? It's like, are you taking responsibility for the food that you eat? Or is it like, no, I didn't have a plan, so I just thought, having a fucking box of biscuits was going to help me. All right. So habit number 1, show up, be honest. So track what we eat, and for us, mostly what we use is photographs. You could use MyFitnessPal, you could write it down, right? But the photographs don't lie. And then are we making some sort of a plan? The next thing is, don't drink calories. Okay, so are you having 2 to 4 liters of water a day? Is it 3? Is it 3.5? I don't care really at the minute, right? It's just 2 to 4, somewhere between there, and you're not consuming a shitload of calories like Coke, fizzy drinks, teas or coffees with loads of sugar in them. Okay, that's going to be crucially important. The next thing is, do you eat slow and chew your food? So imagine a situation where you had a plate of chicken and broccoli, and you cut off a piece of chicken, you cut off a piece of broccoli, you put it in your mouth, and you chewed it 10 times and then swallowed it, and then you went and got your next bit. It would obviously take you a lot longer to eat, and this is crucially important because this allows your body to feel full. It allows you to feel satisfied from your food. And again, these seem like really simple things, but if you are carrying more weight than what you want, chances are you eat really, really fast. You probably don't even speak to people when you're eating. You probably don't even look up off the plate. And I know this for a fact because this is how I would eat, all right, before I start trying to implement some of these rules. And when I start talking to people about these things, I see them smile on their face, and it's like, fuck yeah, that's like me. So it's important to slow down. It allows you to digest your food, it allows the digestive enzymes in your mouth to kick in. It allows you to break down your food so you can actually process it a lot better. But ultimately, it allows you to feel fuller and more satisfied. So ghrelin and leptin are the hormones involved around this. But it takes this response, from the hormones that go from your belly to your brain. It's about a 20-minute response. So if you're finished your dinner in 5 minutes, of course, then you're going to still feel hungry and then go back to the press, maybe grab something else out and then eat that. And the net result of that is that we've ate too much food in a particular day, all right? The next thing to think about is, and again, I suffer from this, is like, listen, sometimes I nearly see eating as a competition, and if I don't feel absolutely stuffed, I haven't had a good feed. So this idea of eating to 80% full, and this idea of it's okay to not finish every little bit on your plate. And Irish people, it's like, oh, there's fucking kids starving in Africa. This is what we're told as kids. There's kids starving in Africa. You've got to eat everything on your plate. All right. So now as an adult, we're filling our plate like with mountains of food and then seeing it as a chore that we have to eat all the food. It's okay to put a little bit away. I'm not even saying, oh, you have to throw it in the bin, but it's okay to use a smaller plate, or it's okay to have a smaller portion, and it's okay to leave food on the plate. So think to yourself, do I eat till I'm absolutely stuffed, or do I eat to 80% full? The next thing then is, am I having some protein and vegetables 3 times a day? So for most people, they're lucky to eat vegetables at the dinner time. All right, so it's like maybe 1 portion of veg, and I'm not talking about bloody mashed potatoes here. We're not classifying that as a portion of vegetables. So are you eating 3 portions of protein and vegetables a day? The next thing then is, are we controlling our portions? So for anybody who's done like a 6-week challenge or whatever, we try and teach them that, about the size of your hand is a portion of protein, a portion of carbs is about the size of your fist, and two fists is a portion of vegetables. So if you were to have 2 fistfuls of vegetables and a portion of protein 3 times a day, 99.95% of people would look exactly the way they want to look, and they would feel great. Okay? So the next thing then is that we move on from is, like, are you consulting with a coach? All right? Are you sitting down? Are you talking to a coach? Is the coach helping you, make better decisions? Is the coach kind of holding up the mirror and showing you that some of the stuff you're doing is helping you, some of the stuff is hindering you, and giving you some advice on how best to make the best plan and how best to implement the best habits for you? So again, thinking about when we talk about nutrition, what's important, we have this idea of energy balance. Energy balance is calories in, calories out, and then macronutrients. What, are you eating enough protein? Are you eating enough carbs? Are you eating enough fats? And that's going to get 90% of the results. But everybody wants to talk about nutrients. Everybody wants to talk about timing of their food. Is it okay to eat after 6 o'clock? What should I eat exactly after my workout? What about supplements? And ultimately, none of these things really matter. That top 10% doesn't really matter if we're not getting the bottom 90% nailed down. So we got to get that nailed down first, and then we can start refining things later on. Remember, follow a system, optimize the system later on. So again, when we talk about portions, for a female, if you're having about 4 portions of protein or 3 portions of protein a day, 8 fistfuls of vegetables, 1 or 2 portions of carbs, 2 or 3 portions of fats, and a piece of fruit a day. You were eating that for 2-3 weeks and you stuck to it, everything would be golden. Guys, you can see what yours are there. And there's a sample, kind of what a portion of protein will look like, what a portion of carbs will look like, what a portion of vegetables will look like. So, ultimately, if you're thinking about this breakfast, all right, I always like to think, for most people, if you give yourself kind of 3 options for breakfast, 3 options for lunch, 3 options for dinner, and a breakfast could be, protein and some vegetables and some berries, whacking into a blender as a smoothie, we're talking like 30 to 40 seconds. And this mix here has, apples, cucumber, avocado, mango, spinach, and linseeds. I think I got that in Lidl or Tesco or something, I can't remember. Whacking a scoop of protein powder in it for there, laughing. If you look at the omelette over on the right hand side, we turn around and it's like we've got some spinach in there, some French beans, we've got some carrot, some peppers, and 3 eggs, right? A bit of salt and pepper and a bit of spicy stuff. I don't know what it is. But ultimately, if you can imagine, if they were your 2 options for breakfast, one is quick, one you've got a little bit more time, and that's all you ate for breakfast for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you were looking to tone up, you were looking to lose weight, what do you think would happen? So if you compare what are you having to breakfast to what those breakfasts look like, what do you think the result would be? Next thing, if we're thinking about lunch, again, vegetables and protein. On the right hand side, we've got a little bit of rice in there, but again, mainly vegetables and protein. For dinner, again, vegetables and protein. I don't really care, do you have the carbs, do you not have the carbs? So top left, it's like meatballs with some potatoes and a shitload of vegetables. Down the bottom, it's a steak and some avocado, loads of vegetables. I think there's pears in there and a few grapes and nuts. Up the top in the middle, we've got some avocado, we've got some protein, we've got vegetables. Yeah, there's bread and butter there. Oh, is that going to kill me? No. Over on the right hand side, we've got some potatoes, we've got some vegetables, and again, we've got some protein. Now, if I was looking to cut back on my calories, all I would do is just cut back, maybe take out some of the carbs, or maybe swap out the steaks for some leaner meat versions. So if that's ribeye steak, it could be fillet steak. Or it could be chicken or turkey or fish or that type of thing. But the idea is that we're having meat and vegetables, meat and vegetables, meat and vegetables a few times a day. And that is the system that we'd like to follow. So before we think about optimizing any system, we actually have to follow something consistently for a few days or a few weeks and then produce a result. And then we can tweak or alter that based on what we want the outcome to be. Now look, here's some questions that come up over and over again when it comes to nutrition. I'm new to this whole nutrition thing. Where do we start? Simple. Pick one of your meals, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and start trying to make that better. That is the habit that you're forming. All right. So listen, are you eating some protein and vegetables for your breakfast? No, do that for 7 days. Then we can move on from there. What's the best diet to follow? Obviously, if you remember back to what I spoke about Western Price, there is no such thing as a best diet. It's a diet that you can follow consistently, which gives you the results that you want and makes you feel good. That is the best diet to follow. All right? Is counting calories important for weight loss? Counting calories is not necessarily important, but we do have to control or track the amount of food that we're eating, the total volume of food. Should I avoid carbs? No. Should I avoid grains? It depends. Do they make you feel good? Do they make you feel bad? Eat some, see how you feel afterwards. Then don't eat some for a few days, see how you feel. If you feel better, don't eat them. If you feel great, eat them. It's as simple as that, all right? What and when should you eat around your workouts? For most people that we train, what you eat around your workouts doesn't really matter, all right? So I wouldn't be like, oh, I need protein straight after me, a scoop of protein powder straight after training. That doesn't matter a fuck if all the other stuff isn't nailed down and important. Should I drink less alcohol? If you're asking, the chances are you probably should drink less alcohol. Listen, I love a drink, but the reality of the matter is that alcohol is not healthy for you in any way, shape, or form, or is it going to help with any fat loss goals? That being said, I mean, it is enjoyable, but if you're whacking down a bottle of wine 3 or 4 times a week, or more, 5 times a week, chances are that could be the number one thing holding you back or making you gain weight. Does a paleo diet live up to the hype? No, not really. Should I detox or juice cleanse? No. Do sleep habits and stress really affect nutrition? Yes, they really, really do. Imagine a situation where you are up late and you miss 2 or 3 hours of sleep and you wake up in the morning, you're going to be tired. Now, your body's response to being tired is twofold. It is either go asleep, which you can't do because you're going to work, or I need an energy boost or an energy spike. And where do we get energy from? We get energy from food. We get more energy from carbs and fats than we do from other food sources. So if you're going to eat something like a donut or a pastry, which is loaded with carbs and fats, your body's like, yes, winner, winner, chicken dinner. So guys, that's a quick response. Then when it comes to some of the biggest challenges, I can't stop stressing or emotional eating. Ultimately, if you go back to the habit loop back at the beginning here, what we want to find out is like, what is your cues for the stress, or what is your cues for the emotional eating? And then we can, only then, when we understand those cues, could we put something in place. So for a lot of people, you know, how we feel about a situation from a stress standpoint is down to what we think inside our head. So sometimes I'll be driving down the motorway or the N11 I'm in, and you know, I get stressed up to the bollocks because I go to a red light. Now, if I let that stress accumulate and keep trickling throughout the day, I'm bundling up, like blowing up a balloon full of stress, and eventually it's going to burst. And for me, that could end in emotional eating. So it's just like, listen, Jay, don't be as stressed going up to the bloody traffic lights. It doesn't matter if it is red or green. Now, I'm using a very simple example there just to illustrate the point. But if you can understand why you're stressed, if you're stressed because you're not getting enough sleep, you're up all night watching Netflix, it's like, dude, stop watching so much Netflix. So I hope that makes sense. But again, this is where a coach will come in to help you with that. The next thing to think is, I don't plan meals. I mean, for most people, planning meals is going to be crucial. Having some idea of what you're having for breakfast, some idea of what you're having for dinner, and ultimately having the food there. So if you're saying to yourself, I want either a shake in the morning or I want an omelette, and you open up the fridge and there's no spinach and you've got no berries, you're not making a shake, right? If you open up the fridge and you've got no eggs, you're not making an omelette. So these things are really, really important. I eat too quickly. Obviously, we know there what we need to do is slow down. I have a serious sweet tooth. What I would say in that situation, again, is start to go back to the habit loop and have a look at what is the cue, what is the craving, what is the response, what is the reward, and then start looking at that. So a lot of times people's sweet tooth is just a cry out for energy. They need to go sleep more, all right? Or they need to reduce down the stress, or they need to have a bigger breakfast, or they need to have a bigger lunch, because depending on where your sweet tooth craving kicks in could tell you a lot about why your body is craving this food. Why is it looking for more energy? I eat out a lot. Look, I mean, if you eat out a lot, you could just ask for, a vegetable and chickens, for example. You could go with a salad. But if you're eating out a lot, you kind of have to ask yourself, why am I eating out a lot? Is it just out of convenience, and is it helping you get the result you want? If not, maybe reconsider and think, can I prepare some of my food, or can I eat out less? Or when you are eating out, look for better options, better places to eat. I eat larger portions than I need. Think back to the 80% full rule. I don't have time to prepare food. Reconsider that maybe you do have time. Like, where is your time going? But even at that, what we always want to think about is, listen, let's say, for example, we are stuck for a bit of time. What can we do? Could we use a slow cooker to get more food? If you were stuck coming home, could you stop off at Tesco's, run in quickly, grab a cute chicken and a bag of microwave vegetables? Could that be the meal that you have? I drink too much. Again, if you drink too much, that's a conversation to kind of have with yourself. The question you want to ask yourself is this producing a result that is positive for my life? And if it's not, then maybe you want to reconsider how much we're drinking. But definitely, as I said at the beginning, alcohol is not going to help in any way, shape or form with health or weight loss. And it's probably going to negatively impact those things to a great extent. And a lot of people that we see, hands up, honest, a lot of people I see in the gym eat quite well, train really, really hard, but they just fucking drink too much. I'm not turning around saying they're alcoholics or anything like that, but they just enjoy drinking too much, and as a result, it's having a knock-on consequence to their waistline, and also a knock-on consequence to their long-term health and longevity. So just a little recap, guys, all right? When we're thinking about this, why do people get things wrong? They're making, I suppose, they're living in the complexity and not cutting back and actually going to the simple stuff. How do we fix it? Ultimately, we need to think about simple habits that are consistent, that we adhere to over a long, sustained period of time, and ultimately think about your identity. When I think about identity, imagine this scenario where you've got a vegan and I tried to hand them a steak to be like, no way am I eating that. All right. Imagine where you didn't drink alcohol and somebody tried to hand you a drink. You'd be like, no way am I drinking that. So for some people, it's like, no way am I going to order a Chinese on a Saturday night and sit down and eat 3 packets of crisps and 2 bars of chocolate. I mean, any one of those things is okay, but I'm not the type of person who does all 3 of those things one after another and sits down and watch Netflix until 3 o'clock in the morning. All right. What to do, all right? So ultimately what you got to do is trust the process. Think about sitting down with a coach, working out a system that's going to work for you. Adhere to the system, so stick to it, and then consistently show up. I mean, there's no point being on a nutrition plan between Monday and Thursday night and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday going off on a fucking mad one and then coming back in on Monday and be like, oh, this doesn't work. It's like, no, you didn't work the plan. Every plan works when you work the plan. So if we're thinking about then how to get the best results, it's choose habits that support your goal, consistently follow a system, then optimize the system, and ultimately ask a coach for help in order to go through all that. And again, what people want, when I'm thinking about nutrition, it comes in, this is our last slide, it comes in 4 levels or 4 layers. So level 1, just eat real food. All right. Level 2, start controlling their calories. That's what 99.9% of people need. If they just done those 2 things, they would have everything they want. All right. After that, then level 3 is like control calories and macronutrient breakdown. And then the last level is control calories, macronutrient breakdown, and timing and periodization of our nutrition based around our exercise and activity. That's the real sexy stuff that everybody wants to talk about. But again, that's complex. Most people don't need complex. Don't worry about complex until you can follow a simple system consistently. And guys, that's all I got for you. So any questions, hit me up. And ultimately, in order to make the best out of this presentation, you got to sit down with a coach and figure out a plan which is best for you as an individual. Peace out.